Well, greetings, everybody. I'm very happy you're able to join me for this part 2 in the series on the genius of truth. Today, we're focusing on the lifestyle genius of truth, the active, living, incarnational truth. This is Dr. Gordon E. Carkner, a meta-educator with UBC graduate students, an author, blogger, and YouTube seminar leader. Here are some of my books: The Great Escape from Nihilism, Mapping the Future, and 10 Myths About Christianity. As we said in our first video, The Genius of Truth, truth is important, objective, and powerful. We want to see how it's powerful for our personal lives today. Secondly, truth has a claim on us. There is a sense in which each of us has to reckon with truth. And thirdly, Christian truth is compatible with science, history, and philosophy. So I'm glad you're going to join me on this question of the existential aspect of truth. We want to probe these various dimensions, and this is particularly the existential knowledge of truth, or launching a deeply meaningful life on a truth platform. First of all, fruitfulness is a strong characteristic of truth. For language philosopher Donald Davidson, any theory of truth is also a theory of meaning. An intimate connection exists between meaning and truth. And Charles Taylor affirms this, McGill philosopher Charles Taylor. He articulates this as constitutive language in chapters 6 and 7 of his book, important book, The Language Animal. He says, humans are meaning-seeking animals. So this is the other half of human language. There's the scientific half, and this is the question of meaning. It relates to religion, emotion, the humanities, etc. So the key question is, what is it that resonates with me at my deep inner core? As we know, Christian truth is not easy belief, nor does it come naturally to us. Often we need special information from somebody who has a grasp on it, or reading the Bible. But eminently, Christianity is livable. It adds more moral capital, and it remains practical. Upon discovery, truth changes our outlook, helping us to face reality within and without, whatever the cost. The truth of Christianity also carves out space for individual gifts, for virtues such as honesty, humility, forgiveness, and compassion, and individual callings, as we might find in the giftedness listed in Romans 12, 1 Corinthians 12, and Ephesians 4 in the New Testament. There is much to internalize and grapple with, one might say, reckon with. This is the work of spiritual formation. And in my book, Mapping the Future, I gave a number of resources on a broad spectrum of spiritual formation. I think there are 30 different categories. So the bottom line here is a biblical teaching under the aegis of Jesus' lordship invokes the high stakes of discipleship. During spiritual formation, a believer doesn't need to second guess every act of discipleship. They humbly come to understand that obedience is a stance of mutual flourishing and personal freedom. Next, how do we make this truth accessible to others? And this is part of the incarnational nature of truth. It's the incarnational witness is two-sided. On one hand, truth is beautiful, it's powerful, truth is good, it is wise, it promotes trust and communion. The believer in truth makes it present to friends, colleagues, and society. We now know that God is deeply invested in human beings, as we see in the work of Abraham Heschel, from Abraham to Augustine and down to our day. The new covenant, as in 2 Corinthians, articulated by the Apostle Paul, offers striking insight into God's invitation to heal, to find a new identity and to grow up into Christ. It's a beautiful statement on this in Eugene Peterson's book, Practice Resurrection, which we've studied as a graduate group a few years ago. Such faith rooted in truth is filled with new surprises. There's a lot to fathom. Kevin Rao talks about this in Christianity's Surprise, a Sure and Certain Hope. And if you look at the book of Proverbs, especially Proverbs 8, 1 to 36, you'll see that it speaks of the wise, truth-filled life of integrity, a solid ground on which to live, love, and contribute meaningfully in life. And I remember that university is the best time, a great time to drill down into truth, to access its life-transforming impact. It certainly was the case for me. And even since then, since those undergrad days, I found that we can always keep going deeper with Christian truth. Christian teaching at the same time is also an explanatory hypothesis that accounts for a wide range of features to life, history, the cosmos, and the nature of humanity. One could say it offers robust explanatory power. It is a comprehensive worldview of God's creation and redemption, a hermeneutical big picture, as Jens Zimmerman says in A Short History of Hermeneutics. Scholarship has established the documentary and historical credentials of the New Testament. And so we marshal the best minds in science, hermeneutics, textual studies, documents, history, and philosophy for the Christian apologia. This strengthens Christianity's plausibility. Next, we want to talk about the twofold aspect of finding your voice and taking responsibility. On one hand, we have apologetics, and God works through the intellect of an individual to lend credibility and depth to the decisions of faith. That is, to follow the Jesus way within a life grounded in agape love. The book by Eugene Peterson, The Jesus Way, is quite helpful on this line. It shows how the roots of the story of Jesus are deep in the Old Testament. We naturally long for coherence, and as the world poses tough questions about our faith and our claim to serve a good God amidst suffering and evil, we do well to give account, as 1 Peter 3:15 talks about. And narrative is a powerful way to make sense of life, to deliver on both meaning and coherence, to reveal the richer interpersonal and transcendent dimensions of life. This is a form of hospitality, showing others where to find the truth. I recommend my bibliography on apologetics in this website on my blog. And the key word here under apologetics is the question of the ability to articulate, to explain the Christian truth. On the other side is the whole area of responsibility, what one might call praxis or engagement. Christian faith entails intentional, responsible thinking and action for the benefit of both self and the other, towards personal integrity and social justice. This includes virtues such as humility, hospitality, servanthood, and generosity. In order to deepen one's faith, one must believe in it existentially, within a changed, self-giving lifestyle. Faith is not just a good idea, after all. As Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish theologian, once mused, "What do I find in my deepest core to be true? It is agape love. A loving God is my central explanatory concept, the center of my very universe." So love is not our duty, but actually our destiny, as N.T. Wright talks about in his video on 1 Corinthians 13. This is the way to resolve human nihilism, cynicism, anxiety, and despair. Again, the key word here is praxis or engagement. Must engage the truth. Finally, we want to talk about embodying or incarnating the truth. Incarnation is where God's eternity and creation's temporality meet, says D. Stephen Long in his profound book, Speaking of God. This is no simplistic statement, but rather a profound food for personal reflection. If indeed Jesus is the wisdom of God and the power of God, the reason, the tell us or goal of everything, as in Colossians chapter 1, God's truth must become part of us. We must embody the truth, indwell it, live into it. As we open ourselves to God, truth then builds us up, makes us stronger, better, more creative, and imaginative. And an illustration of this in a human's life, I think you could find no better illustration of someone who has lived out the truth than the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. My wife has taken a great interest in her and followed her over the past number of years in her role in holding Europe together. For a philosopher in this area of embodied truth, we could look at Maurice Merleau-Ponty. He's famous for his discussion on embodiment, embeddedness within society. I'd also like to recommend my cutting-edge 13-part blog series called Incarnational Spirituality, A New Horizon at this site, ubcgcu.org. So at the end of the day, creation and new creation are both the first and the last word or words in the biblical narrative. It's God's creation and his renewal of the world in and through Jesus, his Messiah. So the one true God really has acted in history, and this changes everything. So what are our conclusions from this short discussion on living the truth, living into the truth? First, truth is not merely intellectual. It is that for sure. It must also be lived to be fully grasped. This is the idea of reckoning with the truth personally. This is the existential aspect. Secondly, when lived consistently, both intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually, it can offer a strong voice for Christian hope, or the Christian apologia, the reason for our faith. Third, we know truth at greater existential depth, personal existential depth, when we pursue God and take responsibility for our world. It begins to shape our very identity as rooted in the truth. And finally, Jesus' incarnation has radical implications for our spirituality. He is the pioneer of a new creation, a renewed world, and a new social imaginary. I guess you could say he is truth as a person. So here are some resources to wrap things up, and I hope you've enjoyed the seminar. Resources on the practical genius of truth. This is my YouTube channel here, and you can check that out. And there's also a special complimentary YouTube video called Can We Make Peace Between Faith and Reason? I recommend Sarah Clarkson's book, The Beautiful Truth, How God's Goodness Breaks into Our Darkness. And then Soren Kierkegaard's book, The Works of Love. I've talked about Eugene Peterson's book and Charles Taylor's book. Here's one on apologetics or tough questions. Sarah McLaughlin, Confronting Christianity, 12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion. This is part of apologetics, or just being willing to give a reason for our hope, to explain things clearly in terms of the culture and the current issues of our day. She is a very articulate graduate of Cambridge University. There's the book by Jens Zimmerman and D. Stephen Long. Well, thank you very much. This has been excellent musing with you about the living or existential aspect of truth as it's found in following Christ into our world. Thank you very much, and all the best in your thinking. Use this video for discussion groups over the dinner table or in the coffee lounge wherever it would be helpful to you. Thanks very much.